Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for joining us. This is the MMA Sucka Crew podcast. My name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the editor at MMA Sucka, Frazer. Frazer, what's going on? How are you doing today, sir?
Yeah, good, mate. We were just talking off air about how it's been a quiet week in the world of MMA. We've got obviously the facade that was Vita Belfort versus Evander Holyfield that should never have gone ahead. I'll say it now, it should have never gone ahead. Once Oscar De La Hoya, I mean that fight was a strange one on its own, but once he tested positive for COVID, that's the opportunity then to scrap that, have Anderson Silva versus Tito Ortiz headline the event. It is what it is, but I don't think we can talk too much on that because, quite honestly, it should have never happened. So the least said about it, the better, I think.
Yeah, I can't offer anything other. Like last week, we talked about this is such a farce. This is such a silly thing. After the fight, I have nothing new to add. Of this is pretty much exactly what we expected. Anderson Silva got a paycheck and knocked out Tito Ortiz. That was cool, but I can't add anything analytical. It was essentially a one-punch knockout. That was great. It was cool, 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 cool. Where does these rank in terms of the biggest freak show fights of all time? Freak show, some of them like Hongman Choi versus Jose Canseco. This is what we're talking about. Of like Japan used to do freak show fights, but now we do freak show fights, and we do it
Exactly.
more American, I guess.
Yeah, I think it for me it's up there with the Kimbo Slice Data 5000 mess, should we
Uh,
say? That
legendary fight,
was
legendary event. I think
exactly, it
Royce
goes
Gracie
down.
fought Ken Shamrock on that card
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
What an event!
exactly. It goes down a history of one of the why events ever. Why did it have to happen? Did anybody's life really change? Did anybody go up in any rankings? Yes, probably got a little bit of a paycheck, but is anyone really paying a lot of money to see Dada 5000 and Kimbo? Kimbo, yes. Dada, absolutely not. So yeah, it's let's curb that. Let's stop doing this. It's time we grew out of this as a YouTube boxing. I'm kind of all for, because we're not pretending that these people. Jake Paul's not going to go in there. What's it? Cruiserweight. He's not going to fight. You Baturbiev, you Bivols. He's he's a YouTube boxer who's fighting other non-boxers and getting paid and bringing more eyes to the sport of boxing. If it gets more people involved in watching boxing or training boxing, fair enough. We're not trying to pretend that Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. We're not trying to pretend that that's competitive. Logan Paul's not going to go on to fight, you know, anyone of any level at his own weight. They're just they are what they are. They're events. That's fine. These ones where you've got a 58-year-old, was he, Evander Holyfield, 56 or whatever,
Yep.
who wasn't cleared to fight 6 years ago, now cleared to fight, and they're having to move the fight because he wasn't cleared to fight in the state that it was originally planned to be in. It's a mess, and that it's already that has overshadowed the fact that we had, I think it was Oscar Valdez, failed a drugs test and was still allowed to fight because the commission just said, yeah, we haven't, essentially saying we haven't got another name that can jump in on such short notice. You failed this drug that we usually check for, but in this occasion we won't ban you. So boxing hasn't had a good week in my opinion.
I totally co-sign with you. I absolutely agree. Like, there's nothing more I can add. This is a sad freak show. It was sad going in. It was sad coming out. It's dominated the news cycle because there's nothing else to talk about. I had to make posts about it. I had to like talk about it and stuff. But honestly, I don't care. So let's talk about some real news. Let's get into the real like boys who love MMA will love this. What do you think of Machine Gun Kelly versus Conor McGregor? We were talking off air of like, man, who cares? I don't really.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure who Machine Gun Kelly is, and I love hip hop. I'm a big hip hop guy, but yeah, this
Mm.
falls into the who the hell cares category for me.
Yeah,
Fraser, what do you think?
yeah. I mean, we said Machine Gun Kelly, oh, what, the boyfriend of Megan Fox, who she's been around for years in Transformers movies and whatnot. She's famous in her own right, and now she's with Machine Gun Kelly, who I'm sure, if you're in that world, he's a big name, but I for one am not. And I see them both at UFC events. That's fair enough. I have seen the video of McGregor. People say he throws a punch. People saying he's throwing a drink. I've read a number of reports and whatnot. The point is that when he throws, he puts weight on that broken ankle. and
This
almost
is
collapses down. And it's, come on, accept the fact that I don't even know. Just accept the fact that you shouldn't be doing this. You probably still, your bone clearly isn't fused the way it should. If you're putting weight on it and almost collapsing to the floor, just stop trying to cause a headline all the time, good or bad. Just keep yourself to you going as Conor McGregor going to the, I don't even know what it was, VMAs or
something like that.
these award ceremony anyway. That's called, that would have, some MMA sites would have still picked up on that. Him on the red carpet, probably, holding his fists up. That's news for some MMA sites. That's enough. You don't have to get into an altercation with a rapper and throw a punch and say, I don't know who he is. Vanilla Ice lookalike, which I thought was a good line. I did enjoy that. See, that's vintage Conor. That's good trash talk. Not the kind of stuff we saw in the Poirier trilogy. So yeah, but it goes hand in hand with the Holyfield Belfort fight for me. Why?
Totally agree. I do like we just just typical Frazer. Like, we got technical analysis on his punch thrown on the red carpet to Michigan. He put way too much weight on the front foot. If you want more of that, your Conor McGregor 3, Conor Poirier 3 breakdown video. If you want more technical analysis, we got to do more of that because that was really good stuff.
Yeah,
But we haven't had a big event in a while. The UFC's been on
exactly.
vacation.
Yeah. I think post McGregor Poirier fight, we haven't had an awful lot to. We could have gone in on Derek Brunson's takedowns of Darren Till last week, but it was simple for Brunson. I could do an hour-long video on the 2 minutes of Tom Aspinall, but I'm sure it's a very niche market that'd be interested in that. And to be honest, I'd probably watch it back 3 or 4 times just to make sure that I haven't missed anything. So, but that's just my love for Tom Aspinall.
Well, we'll get to this. Well, we will, like you said, it's a slow week. We have Smith versus Spann this weekend, and we will talk a little bit about that. But I want to do a midpoint of the year awards. So we'll kind of review male fighter of the year so far, fight of the year so far, submission knockout of the year so far, and female fighter of the year so far. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. There's been plenty of good performances this year. So, we're looking at best knockout so far,
Yes.
best submission so far, fight of the year so far. I seem to remember last year we got Moreno versus Figueiredo late on in the year. So what we say today could it could be completely irrelevant in when we do I'm sure we'll do a review of the year show come December, or even sort of early January, because we might have a December 31st card, and who knows.
Absolutely.
So,
and especially with fighter of the year, looking at like who fought this year, we'll jump right into fighter of the year, and I'll tell you why I'm kind of feeling that way. Because with fighter of the year, Kamaru Usman has fought twice this year. He still has a fight scheduled later this year. He wins, he is absolutely fighter of the year. But so I'll list off, this is voted on by fans so far of the 2021 fighter of the year so far. Here's the top 5. Dustin Poirier, he fought twice. He beat the same guy. Kamaru Usman, he's fought twice this year. He's scheduled for a third. Max Blessed Holloway, just 1 win this year. Francis Ngannou, just 1 win this year. And Jan Blachowicz, just, again, 1 win this year, but he's scheduled for a second one. Out of those top 5, thus far, who is likely male fighter of the year?
I think purely on name basis, it's got to be Kamaru Usman. He'd also be one of my votes for knockout of the year against Masvidal. I think the way he palms down the lead hand to land the big overhand right, and that's not a TKO, that is a knockout. Masvidal is gone. He's out. I think Francis, I don't see him fighting again this year unless he fights. I mean, obviously we know he's fighting Cyril Gane next, but I can't see him fighting again this year unless it's on the December, if they do a December 31st card, like they sometimes, or 30th. I know it's last couple of days of December they sometimes do, but I can't see that happening, to be honest. And the win over Stipe is what it is, but you've also got to caveat that with they're now 1-1 rather than Poirier quality performance in January. And then the performance in, when was it? July. It was a good performance, and he was winning the second fight. Like you say, we've got a breakdown that we can put in the video description, so you can check that out. But at the end of the day, it did end in an injury, and we we said on our breakdown, he's winning that fight and he's going on to further dominate that fight. However, if McGregor hadn't had the injury, how does the fight go? We can't say for sure that Poirier just wipes the floor with him. So, if he fights Charles Oliveira at the end of the year and gets that victory and looks good in that, then he really puts himself in the conversation. But for me, it's Jan Blachowicz is definitely up there. He beat the undefeated Israel Adesanya. Yes, it was at a higher weight class for Adesanya, but I don't think people are giving Blachowicz enough props for that. Paulo Costa was a lot bigger than Izzy when they fought. Yoel Romero was a lot bigger than Izzy when they fought, and these guys couldn't beat him. Costa got finished by him. Yes, but Blachowicz is bigger than both of those men, but he dominated Izzy for the final, I think, 3 rounds. Or when he was able to get Israel Adesanya to the ground, he dominated. Yep. And now, if he looks good against Glover Teixeira in a couple of months, it's gonna be difficult for me to look past Blachowicz. But because he's not a big name like Usman, he probably will get overlooked.
Yeah, and you know what's funny with the 3 guys that you mentioned, Jan Blachowicz and Dustin Poirier, and I'll throw in Charles Oliveira. All 3 of them in 2021 are probably up for comeback fighter of the year in terms of, like, Dustin Poirier was kind of in and out of the top 5, and now if he wins a title, that's a big deal. Charles Oliveira was on a losing streak at one point in his career, come back, he wins a title, and if he manages to defend it or even lose it, amazing, man. Jan Blachowicz was almost cut from the UFC, and he comes back and it beats undefeated guys and becomes champion. Those 3 guys, pretty good comeback of the year. But yeah, on male fighter of the year, Kamaru Usman already has 2 knockouts over 2 top 5 opponents. If he wins in November against Colby Covington, that's 3 title defenses against guys in the top 5. I can't see that any other way of he's clearly male fighter of the year, right? That's at least my opinion. Although it's a great top 5 there, but I do agree with you on Ngannou that, like, some of these fan votes are just popularity contests, because Ngannou had one win this year, and, like, okay, cool. And it was a great win, but, like, this is clearly a popularity contest.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to put Ngannou in there, yes, his win was good, but Max Holloway is also in there, and for me, Max Holloway, although he didn't get the finish, that is a performance of possibly I've watched the fight honestly about 5 or 6 times. That is one against Calvin Kattar. I think it's the first event of the year in January, first event on ABC. Mm-hmm. That is maybe, other than, for me, that and Cody Garbrandt against Dominic Cruz are 2 of the best performances I have ever seen. Holloway against Calvin Kattar, yes, he didn't get the knockout, so he's not going to be in the running for knockout of the year. But if we're talking about male fighter of the year, as far as, yes, we can only judge him on that one performance, but he was flawless in that performance. If we're going to be judging Kamaru Usman across, yes, he's got more wins, more knockouts, title defenses, which is obviously, I think that you've got to caveat that as being quite important. But he did get rocked against Gilbert Burns. He might get caught again like he did against Covington the first time. Max Holloway, for the 25 minutes that he's competed this year, in 2021, his in competition, he's been flawless. Yeah. And you can't say that about Kamaru Usman. But with that being said, Kamaru Usman has fought more often, maybe not higher level competition, because Calvin Kattar is a solid competitor, but these are guys that have earned their title shots. Maybe not so much with Jorge Masvidal the second time round, but
I agree.
We did want to see that not on short notice, and it was, even when Usman doesn't have to take that fight on short notice, you can see what he can do with a savage knockout. So
yeah, absolutely. So we'll go right into what you were talking about with fighter of the year. That Holloway versus Kattar performance, absolutely unreal. And you know what sucked about it? It was the first event on ABC, and they kind of put it on, I think it was midpoint in the afternoon in the US. No one watched it. It was like a Demetrius Johnson fight where I think it got 200,000 views despite being on free TV. I'm like, man, that's one of the greatest performances in history of the entire sport. Got like 200,000 views on free TV, dude. That sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he's lucky that he's got the snippet of the 30 seconds when I think he lands a straight on, from what I can remember, he lands a straight on Kattar and then slips about 3 punches, beats his chest. I'm the best boxer in the UFC, baby. lands a couple more, slips again. He's
It's
looking
so
outside,
good.
and it like he's lucky that he managed to get that in a 30-second thing that could be clipped and put on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm not big. I don't do, but TikTok. I know it's only short videos. I don't do all that. It's not really my game. But I'm sure if the UFC have got a TikTok, that should be the most viewed clip.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do knockouts, and knockouts only in theory take 1 second, but it's the straight and the land without looking, and then he's dodged 3 or 4 punches from Calvin Kattar, who to the casual you're just saying, oh look, this guy is just so much better than this guy. To us who know the sport, Calvin Kattar's boxing is probably, other than maybe Max Holloway, the best in the featherweight division. Just pure boxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is crazy impressive from Max Holloway to be able to avoid all 3 of those punches or 4 of those punches, then land back, then step back and almost finish the fight, and be chatting to DC and Dan Hardy on the outside. I think it was DC, but it's definitely Dan Hardy on the outside of the octagon. The performance for me, I think, been considering it for a while now. I might either do a breakdown article or we might just do a bonus pod one week on whether, if it's a slow week like we've got this week, we'll try and do a little bit of analysis on maybe just that segment or just that round, because it was such a good performance. It needs to be talked about more often. And like you say, I think if that performance happened on the last event instead of the first event of the year,
yes,
everyone's talking about it for the year going ahead, So
definitely.
it's just unlucky timings wise, I think.
I think you're absolutely correct. That's kind of the way people do. Later in the year, it tends to get a little bit more awards. So it's good that we do a midpoint review just to remember what happened. And yeah, that Holloway fight. Now, Holloway is coming off that win, and it was a dominant win. Who would you want to see him next? He's been scheduled a few times against what's that gentleman's name?
Yair Rodriguez.
Thank you. He's been scheduled against Yair. He's probably, Max Holloway is in that Rich Franklin zone where he can't beat the champion, but he actually beats everybody else in the division. Do you still want to do the Yair fight, or what's next for Max Holloway?
I think obviously Holloway's got, well, it's next week, but Holloway's got to see how this main event next week plays out, because he knows that he can beat Brian, or the old Brian Ortega, fairly convincingly.
That's true.
Now, a third fight with Volkanovski is a hard sell because he's lost 2. Yes, he lost by split decision, but it's still a hard sell. He's 0-2. It's like we haven't got a great, I know it's slightly different circumstances, but we haven't got a great pull to see Masvidal versus Usman 3.
No.
Because he's 0-2. Now, he beats Brian Ortega again, in my opinion, because he beat him so decisively first time round. Does he beat Volkanovski? History would say no. So, yeah. But I do want to see, there's only so many times that he can keep beating the top guys before you have to give him that third fight if Volkanovski comes through next weekend. I think a fight against Chan Sung Jung is, it's a fresh fight that we haven't seen. He's almost sort of getting into the Kamaru Usman territory of lapping opponents. Usman's now just fighting people that he's already fought, and we haven't seen Max Holloway versus Chan Sung Jung, and it's one of the few fights that we haven't seen few fighters we haven't seen Max Holloway fight. He's fought Cub Swanson, he's fought Charles Oliveira, he's fought Lamas, Stevens, Pettis, Aldo twice, Ortega. He then went up and lost to Poirier, but he's come back down, beat Frankie Edgar when he was a featherweight. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, it was Frankie Edgar, and then he had two fights with the champ or the current champ, I should say, that obviously didn't go his way. But then he came back and he put on the performance of a lifetime against Calvin Kattar. So, excuse me, it's you can't deny him a title shot if he gets a win over Korean Zombie, especially the way the Zombie looked against Dan Ige last time out.
Yeah, and it's I just absolutely love to watch Max Holloway fight. You could say Max Holloway's fighting a punching bag this week, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll pay top dollar to see him do that.
Exactly, yeah.
And the close fight with Dustin Poirier, we just remember being a Dustin Poirier win. It was a really close fight, and that having a close fight with Dustin Poirier, 2 years ago, has aged really well. Dustin Poirier has been undefeated in that time. He's got a title, or nearly undefeated. He's lost to Habib, and then he came back now. That's aged really well. Like, that's a lightweight as well. Holloway might be able to go up in weight class. But now, speaking of which, This might be an easy one for you. Fight of the year. This is voted on by fans, so I'll give you about 5. Holloway versus Qatar. Okay. Reyes versus Prohashka. That was the spinning back elbow. Oliveira versus Chandler. That was a good one. Ferreira versus Gillespie, and Sandhagen versus Dillashaw. You've kind of already said it. What do you think for fight of the year?
It's difficult because for me, fight of the year has got to be
Like a full fight, right? I'm
a full
surprised with some
fight.
of the stuff here. Yeah, these are first
Yeah,
round knockouts that are here quite a bit.
exactly. Yeah. And I always go back to my fight of the year for, I think it was last year. I couldn't decide out of Joanna versus Wiley Zhang and Izzy versus Calvin. They are fights that at the end of them, I mean, Izzy, Calvin, slightly different because we got I think 3 knockdowns in the final round for Izzy. But those are fights where throughout the fight, both men were hurt and both women were hurt. It could have literally gone either way going into the final round. And you didn't, especially with the Joanna Wiley, when the final bell goes, you do not know who's won. Now, I can't put Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar in fight of the year because it wasn't competitive at all. You'd 50-45, if not, a couple of 10-8s in there, I believe.
Yeah.
So the official scorecard, 50-43, 50-43, and 50-42. That's not fight of the year. That's performance of the year on Holloway's part. But it's not a competitive fight. And now, in my opinion, Sandhagen Dillashaw is arguably fight of the year. Like you say, Reyes for Zhatka, it was good, but it wasn't all that competitive for as long as it lasted, Reyes seemed to be, it never looked like Projatka was in any danger and Reyes was going to finish the fight. It was always going to be Reyes that came off worse on that one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree with your analysis of what exactly a fight of the year candidate needs to be. So this is just voted on by fans, so I didn't make the list. But yeah, I do agree with you where it probably needs to be a full fight and then a back and forth kind of war, like you said, an Israel versus Kelvin kind of fight. Reyes versus Prohashka has a cool storyline where one guy he was knocked out from an up kick and then he came back in the second round. But it's like
of course, I do,
But
I
it's
completely,
still
yeah.
it's a 7-minute fight we're talking about. Same with Oliveira Chandler. Really good storyline there. It's still just a 7-minute fight. Gillespie versus Ferreira. Really awesome storyline there. But yeah, it was like 7-minute fight. Sandhagen versus Dillashaw is probably the only one that actually fits the criteria that we've decided on. And it's not a barn burner, but it's a really exciting fight. And like arguing about the scorecards, I mean, at this point, Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, probably the only one I would put there. But I still would throw in Holloway versus Qatar as just like, this is a fight of the year because it's probably, if someone said, what one full length fight do I need to watch from 2021? We'd probably still say Holloway Qatar, honestly. And welcome to the Holloway Qatar Max Holloway podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yeah, I think for me, fight of the year or fight of the night even has to be a competitive one where, Vicente Luque is always in a fight of the night.
Yeah.
Potential, because he's got that kind of style where he gets caught, he gets hit on. And it's the same as Nico Price, when those two guys fought, I'm not a betting man, but you just put money on them too, because they it's not that they don't have defense, they just almost choose not to use their defense and just walk forward and just hit each other in the center of the octagon. Yeah. Now, that's why I think Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, although it was, from our point of view, unbelievably enjoyable, at no point did you really think that Holloway was gonna in any danger, especially from the third round on, where he just got his time and he got his range. But you do have to say, like you say, if I was to say to someone who's never watched MMA before, from this year you've got to watch this fight, from this year you've got to watch this fight, from this year you've got to watch Holloway versus Qatar, that's the one fight that I'd say. The Dillashaw Sandhagen, because we knew the storylines going into it, was arguably a lot more interesting for us because, how's Dillashaw going to look after such a layoff? Yes, is he going to have a sort of adrenaline dump? Is he going to have like ring rust and whatnot? Now, Holloway Qatar, irrespective of any storylines going into it, is a great fight. So.
Totally is. It's a tough breakdown, tough analysis, because we also like when fight of the year, like Nico Price versus Pereira is here. Yeah, that was a banger. Or like, I think last year people liked a lot of Vicente Luke versus Brian Barberina. But essentially, what you said of like these are Rock'em Sock'em robots. It's not really that great of a fight. The storyline isn't that great coming out of it. Where I almost feel, even though it was a one-sided beatdown, Holloway Qatar really almost ticks every box here, and that's the fight that I want to talk about in 2021 more than I want to talk about like even Sandhagen Dillashaw, because I think even the storylines from Holloway is the better fight, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's how's Holloway gonna, his first two losses in what, about 6 or 7 years for, so Holloway lost to McGregor in 2013 and then didn't lose at featherweight then again until 2019. Yes, he lost against Poirier in 2019, but that was up at lightweight, as we know, and you could tell that in the first round when Poirier hit Holloway, he knew about it. That extra 10 pounds, probably extra 20 pounds on a featherweight frame on fight night obviously made the difference. How was Holloway going to look against Qatar coming off two losses? And I don't think he looked good. He looked excellent. He looked like the best featherweight on the planet.
Oh, no doubt.
Exactly what he needs to have done to sort of get himself back in the conversation.
And he absolutely did it. Man, what an insane career this Max Holloway has had. You could almost say a short career as well, because he really came on the scene back in 2016, 2015 kind of thing, where people really became aware of him, beating Aldo. He wanted to fight Khabib on 4 days notice.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a career this guy has had. I think if he chooses whatever the future holds for this young guy, he's essentially my age. So whatever the future holds for this young guy, he's already been one of the greatest fighters of all time. And of course, when we're talking legacy, I'll still put Aldo ahead of him because I'm a snob like that. But yeah, Max Holloway is one of my favorite fighters. If someone said I want to get into MMA, which fighter should I watch? Max Holloway all day. This guy's a legend
every time, and he's never in any controversy as far as outside of the octagon. It's who should you watch? Conor McGregor. Yeah, but it's everything that goes around with Conor McGregor that you want to sign in for. Side note, I think Holloway beats McGregor, but that's a story for another day. But honestly, that might be my fancy matchup.
Holloway, I would be down for that. What weight class is it at? 55 or 45?
55, I think.
55.
Because
that's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, I think we've seen that Poirier probably hits harder than McGregor, and Poirier was able to land on Holloway. So, and Holloway's got that gas tank, whereas we've still all these years down the line, we've still got questions about McGregor's gas tank. I've got an article coming out either today or tomorrow, another MMA what if Jose Aldo had beaten Conor McGregor at UFC 196.
That's a good one.
So at that time, we'd never seen McGregor out of the second round other than against Holloway when he had the injury and had to wrestle. The fight directly after that, we saw McGregor gas out. Now, if Aldo, I think he'd gone to decision 6 or 7 times in his last 9 fights. If Aldo would have taken it late, how much of a depletion of McGregor's gas tank would we have seen in that fight alone? Cutting down to 145 is going to, it killed McGregor anyway. But we also know that historically he hasn't had the best gas tank. So if that fight would have gone later, if you hadn't caught him, if Aldo was a little bthat calmer, if you hadn't caught him so early, how does that fight go? And I won't give too much away about the article, but obviously that knockout essentially has effects on the career of Masvidal, has effects on the career of Amanda Nunes, Henry Cejudo, and Daniel Cormier with a champ status. So that article should be posted probably tomorrow. So check that out. It was a fun piece. Yeah.
If Conor loses to Jose Aldo, like you said, that changes that the Eddie Alvarez fight never happens. The Floyd, this is huge ramifications. And on the technical side, we were going into the fight. You remember the leg kicks being a point of contention. People saying what if he has a long, wide stance? What if someone just kicks his legs out? Well, Aldo's a leg kicker, but we never saw it. We didn't see it until late Nate Diaz and really with Dustin Poirier, where if you kick out his legs, you actually can have a lot of success with them. So if that fight goes differently, man, that's a great question. So when's the article out?
So it should be out. I've written it. I just need to just go over it and make sure everything's up. So I'll probably get it out, schedule it for tomorrow.
Perfect. Once it's out, I will update this video and link it down below in the description.
There you go.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
So
nice
let's
one.
move forward from the Max Holloway hour into female fighter of the year. Now, this is a tough one because every female fighter has won one, and then they have one more fight scheduled. But I'll go off a list of about five. Amanda Nunes won one, and she has one more scheduled this year. Megan Anderson and Juliana Pena. Valentina Shevchenko won one, and then she has one more scheduled. Jessica Andrade and Lauren Murphy. Rose Namajunas has won one, and then she is defending both against Weili Zhang. Chris Cyborg, she beat Leslie Smith. No fight scheduled this year. And Kayla Harrison has won three, and she's going to go for a fourth, and she's probably going to win all four. I mean, against lesser questionable competition. Based on that, who would be your female fighter of the year? And I know it's tough, and it really does depend on what happens for the rest of the year, but who's your female fighter of the year?
I mean, from that list you give me, I think, although it's slightly lesser competition, it's not her fault. I think it's Kayla Harrison. You know, she can only fight. You can only beat what's in front of you, and you know, you say lesser competition, and yet, with the greatest respect, Megan Anderson probably. Kayla Harrison beats Megan Anderson.
Yeah,
and Kayla Harrison beats Leslie Smith, and Kayla Harrison. I mean, you can't really say about Jessica Andrade because they're too far away in weight classes. But you know, Jessica Andrade has had her. We've seen her lose a lot of times before, and you know, yes, it is what it is. You know, Cyborg was always going to beat Leslie Smith. It's just whether she finished her early and she ended up just finishing her late. But there's one name that wasn't on that list that I thought would be on the list, who is my female fighter, is Marina Rodriguez. You know, finished Amanda Ribas, and got the decision win on late notice against Michelle Waterson, now scheduled to fight Mackenzie Dern.
That's a good one. That's so three fights this year, kind of a breakout star. Yeah, like you said, scheduled to fight.
She'd probably be more, like you said, more maybe a breakout star of the year, female fighter. But at the same time, you know, Amanda Ribas had a lot of hype behind her.
She did.
Badly knocked her out.
Yes.
Michelle Waterson to step up on, you know, they were scheduled to fight anyway, but to step up on short notice and go 5 rounds. First time she's ever gone 5 rounds. Michelle Waterson's a well-respected fighter. To beat her, and now, you know, we'll see against Mackenzie Dern. But I think Rodriguez has probably one of the better stand-ups at 155, Jesus, 115. So I really like Marina Rodriguez as well. I think she's very well-rounded, and I think she's my pick for female fighter of the year so far, just purely based on her skill level in comparison to her competition skill level. They're evenly matched fighters going in.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point. Marina Rodriguez might be the best pick. Came in on a big knockout this year. Speaking of kind of breakouts, I mean, Alexa Grasso is also in that of like she got a big knockout. I think she has one more scheduled this year against good competition in Macy Barber, and then she's going to fight Joanne Calderwood. So there's a few really good like female breakouts this year. But I do agree with your breakdown on. I would personally pick Kayla Harrison. 3 wins this year, going for a 4th. Like you said, if you're going to fight lesser competition, you better look good against them, and she has faced absolutely no adversity in any of her fights at all. She's simply dominating these people. So for my money, I would pick Kayla Harrison, although I do really like what you're saying with Alexa Grasso and Marina Rodriguez as well. So it's been a fun year. It's too bad that someone really didn't put like an exclamation mark on something so you can clearly see of like this person was just so far ahead. But yeah, I'll take Kayla Harrison. No, we get into the real fun one. Best knockout of the year as voted on by fans so far. I'll give you the top 5, and these are some good ones. Sandhagen versus Edgar, the flying knee from earlier this year. Usman versus Masvidal. Reyes versus Prohashka. Blades versus Lewis. And then number 5 is Zhang versus Namajunas. Now, you can throw in a lot more on there, but currently voted on by fans, those are the top 5. What's your pick for knockout of the year?
That's a difficult one. I think either, for me, it's going to be one of the first 2, and I think I'd have to maybe lean towards the Usman versus Masvidal, because we still, despite Usman having these knockouts and, you know, breaking Colby's jaw and knocking out Gilbert, but he's a wrestler. At the end of the day, he's still a wrestler. And he's learned the stand-up game. His stand-up game used to be very elementary, very rudimental, very basic. And
Yes.
since working with
Yeah, no, sorry. It's the first thing
Trevor
that
Whitman.
look.
Trevor
Trevor
Whitman.
Whitman.
I,
Yeah.
I, I had Jason Perillo in my head, and I knew it wasn't him. But
Close.
yes, yeah, exactly. Still two two brilliant stand-up coaches. But yeah, since working with Whitman, he's now a dangerous striker. He's becoming a better all-round mixed martial artist, and I think I'd forgotten about the Sandhagen Edgar one, maybe because Edgar is a legend of the sport, and nobody wants to see him knocked out like that. But that was brutal. For me, I think the Reyes, sorry, not the Reyes, the Blades Lewis one was good, but that was always how Lewis was going to win that fight, catching Blades shooting in for the takedown.
Yeah.
And the Wiley Zhang one was against Namajunas, or Namajunas knocking out the Zhang, as I say. It's a good knockout, yeah, but I don't know. That seems more of a not a fluke because she set it up having attacked the legs first, and then we see Zhang go to cover the legs, cover her body, and go upstairs. But there's more contentious over that, whether it's Zhang was claiming early stoppage and whatnot. No,
It was, she was out.
exactly. But that's still a TKO for me. Knockout of the year has to be Masvidal-esque knockout where he is not moving. Frankie Edgar is not moving. Blades not moving.
Yeah, it's true. Usman versus Masvidal. Masvidal was absolutely out. He woke up and wasn't sure where he was. Although for knockout of the year, I'm actually going to pick Namajunas versus Zhang, and the reason is because if the UFC does their highlight reel before each event, and you only get it when you're in the arena, and it's kind of like the best of the UFC over the last 2 decades. And I think of this year, the only knockout that would make it on that like highlight reel for the rest of UFC history is probably going to be Namajunas versus Zhang. That head kick knockout is etched in my mind. It's amazing. I know that like it was a short fight, and we actually didn't learn very much from the fight itself because there was no exchanges, there was barely any punches or strikes thrown. But yeah, that knockout, it was probably the most memorable for me of 2021. Even if the storyline doesn't work extremely well after that point or anything like that, that was my favorite knockout this year.
Yeah, I think you'll be lucky to see it just repeated and repeated. And now that they're scheduled again, I think are they scheduled for New York? I think in November.
Yeah,
I think on
yes.
the Usman undercard, aren't they? Or
Yes, it's a
probably
great card. Ooh, it's a great card.
I'm looking forward to breaking that down with you at the end of next month. But yeah, I think you'll be lucky enough to see that just replayed and replayed and replayed and replayed and replayed.
That's absolutely true. But yeah, they are fighting November 6th. So that's going to be a great one here. Submission of the year. We got fighter of the year. Did we get fighter of the year? Male fighter of the year? Yeah, we did Dustin Poirier, Kamaru Usman. Yeah. Best submission of the year is a little bit tough one. Anthony Hernandez submits Vieira. We have Omar Akhmedov versus submits with an arm triangle Breeze. Vicente Luke submits Tyron Woodley. Umar Nurmagomedov submits with a rear naked choke Morozov. And then Amanda Nunes submits Megan Anderson. I think the one that I remember a lot was Anthony Hernandez versus Vieira, because Vieira came in with like the best jiu-jitsu credentials you could imagine, and he submits them. That was great. Woodley versus Luque was a lot of fun too, but it really wasn't a showing of jiu-jitsu at all. It was just like, I think Luque's win over who was his last win against?
Marco Chiesa.
I think that was actually a better showing of his quality as a submission
for
artist.
sure, because
it's a better fighter. It's a better, like, you did beat him on the ground and he's a ground fighter. What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think with the Woodley one, he all but knocked him out on the feet, and then just happened to be able to snatch that sub and just get it over and done with almost,
Yeah.
And you see a lot more of him, of his well-rounded game against Chiesa. The opportunity for Chiesa to stand up was there, and he tried to grab it straight away, and then Luque managed to wrap up the neck, which I thought was a brilliant one. But yeah, I think I've got to go with again, it's difficult because I would originally go with the Hernandez versus Vieira one, but that submission was made available from Vieira.
Yeah.
Just because he just gassed out so badly. Joe Rogan said, "I've never seen a more tired man." On this, it's just a brilliant quote, So I think ultimately, although her ground game is not something she's famous for. Megan Anderson getting submitted by Amanda Nunes. Again,
Unreal.
it's getting rocked on the feet and finishing it on the ground. Nunes could have just ground and pounded her and finished her, but just to show a well-rounded game, and we don't see an awful lot of, what was it, like a triangle armbar, but it was an inverted triangle armbar, and it was, is she going to snap the arm? Is she going to choke her out? And I think you just saw Anderson, the panic on her face of what is going on here. I'm both, the air is being squeezed from me as well as my arm being put in the position that I'm getting me out and tap, get me out of here. So I think for me so far, that's submission of the year. And it doesn't go down as, a Demetrius Johnson versus Ray Borg submission of the year, because there hasn't been too many outstanding, off the wall twisters or, suplex to armbar submissions this year. And, like we said, I can't remember if we said it at the beginning or if we said it off air, but it is only September. We've still got a lot of cards left this year across, however many promotions that we follow. It's the sort of the big four, as it were, PFL, ONE, Bellator, and the UFC. Mm-hmm. We've also got, we saw that Boston Crab submission on a regional circuit a few years ago, and you get a crazy submit. We got the Rolling Thunder knockout of Ross Pearson on Probellum a couple of years ago as well. So, and it's
what about Toby Amata submits Jorge Masvidal in Bellator with the reverse triangle?
Reverse triangle.
Yeah,
but it's almost like he's wearing like a backpack, but it was upside down. Like it's and stuff like that. We've got, there hasn't been that one twister submission or like the suplex to armbar submission that we're used to. But like I say, we've got good 4 months left of the year, so it wouldn't surprise me to see a flying guillotine through the cage, or just a Showtime flying armbar or something. It's,
man, I'd be into that. That would be great.
Don't get me wrong, it's something that I'm more than on board for, but I also just wouldn't be surprised if we saw it this weekend with Smith versus Spann. It's just that look going to be.
I'll throw a couple more really good submissions that happened this year, because those were the top 5, but I think some of the ones listed outside there are a lot better. Arlovsky versus Aspinall is a great submission. I think the storyline is really good there. We also had Luque versus Chiesa, as I mentioned, is probably the one better submission. One that I forgot about was Mackenzie Dern submits Nina Arsenov. That was a great submission. That was like submission jiu-jitsu, like position to position to position to submission. You really got an idea of how good she is at grappling against a very good game opponent. She didn't knock her out and then submit her after. So that might be, honestly, just in terms of showcase of jiu-jitsu, that's a really
just
good
straight
submission.
just straight submission, straight jiu-jitsu. It was get the fight to the ground. I'll work a rear naked choke, I'll work an armbar, I'll concentrate on just little tiny movements every couple of seconds just to get, and then I'm going to take your arm now that you've given it to me.
Absolutely brilliant work here. So that's all we got for fights and submissions of the year thus far. Still waiting for a few people to really put an exclamation mark on the year, and that'll kind of round out what the storylines are. But we still have maybe a fantasy matchup and also the fights from this weekend, which are Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. We have Ion Cutelaba versus Devin Clark. I don't know what else you want to talk about on this card. What do you think? What do you see on this upcoming match?
Yeah, it's I'm lost for words. It's very thin, and I just think we spoke about it. We've got a really good pay-per-view next week. Why they couldn't have put Marlon Moraes versus Murad Duashvili is the prelim headliner.
That's a good card. That's a great fight. I mean,
that's a great fight with title implications. Why not put that as the main event of this fight night? But I'm excited to see Anthony Smith. He looked good last time out against Jimmy Crute. Yes, it finished with a leg injury, but the leg kicks, the jab of Anthony Smith looked really good. And against Ryan Spann, Smith can't be afraid to lose a round, because Spann, he's never gone 5 rounds in the UFC, so it's going to be a new experience for him. He's got solid submissions, Ryan Spann, and good boxing as well. He's got heavy hands, but how's he going to look in the 4th? How's he going to look in the 5th? We've seen Smith scheduled a good 6 or 7 times in the past few years to go. He went 5 rounds with John Jones. He was scheduled for 5 rounds with Glover, with Ozdemir, just off the top of my head. In his last fight, yes, it was a 3-round main event. Sorry, not his last fight. His last fight previous to Jimmy Crute. Yes, it was a 3-round main event, but it was still a main event slot. Yes, it was on short notice, but he's used to being the last one to walk to the octagon. Now Ryan Spann isn't used to that, and I think Smith is just more experienced, more well-rounded. I think it's going to be a fairly. I wouldn't say this goes 5 rounds personally. I think I can see Smith getting a late submission.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Anthony Smith is going to show he's a little bit more of a veteran. And Anthony Smith in his future may never be another title contender, and he never may be a champion, but he can beat anyone out of the top 5 or even the top 10. And I think he absolutely beats Ryan Spann here. Ryan Spann does have a slight reach and height advantage, and maybe the length will be an interesting discussion. However, yeah, I think this is Anthony Smith is going to put on a showcase fight. Like Ryan Spann has struggled against certain fighters like Johnny Walker and Sam Alvey, who we now know you shouldn't be struggling against guys in that quality. So Anthony Smith, I think this is just going to be another showcase for him. Whether it lasts, like you said, 4 rounds with a submission, whether we get a late TKO, I think Anthony Smith does find a finish here, maybe in the 3rd or 4th round. Ground and pound, probably like you said, a submission, honestly. But yeah, so I don't know. It's not this isn't a stay up late kind of card. I don't know how else to say it.
Definitely not. No, it's a catch up on Sunday morning if you've got the time kind of card. I'll obviously watch the fights, and it's these fight nights tend to throw out some big performances, but Smith versus Spann is not a main. It's not a main event. It's simply put, and it's not like this was always scheduled to be a main event. It's not like it was there was another fight that was meant to be the main event of this card. I don't believe.
Yeah,
and you've got Iron Kutalaba in the co-main, who he's famous just for being a bit of a dick. Do you know what I mean? Like at weigh-ins, he just pushes people and gets up in the face of people before the fight and all this. And I can understand that if you're undefeated at 20-0, maybe you're arrogant enough to, but he hasn't looked good at all lately. He last time out he got the draw against Dustin Jacoby, but that was simply put his own fault because he went too hard in the first round and just badly gassed out in the 2nd and 3rd. And then he was well beaten by Ankalaev in their rematch. He was controversially beaten in the first match, which is why we got the rematch.
Mm-hmm.
He looked good against Khalil Roundtree, who looked excellent last weekend.
Yes.
When he went to the wrestling. Now, we've seen Clark get finished and not have a clue what to do on the ground with Anthony Smith. So, yes, Kutalaba likes throwing these big hands and knocking people out, but just do what works at this point, because at the end of the day, he's without a win in his last. He's 1-3 and he's got a draw in his last 5 fights. Now, I don't think he's a big enough name that the UFC are going to keep someone like that. They cut Darren Stewart, so if they're cutting people like Darren Stewart, Kutalaba has got to do something big, and I can see this I can see him gassing out because he's just almost too excited to be in there. Clark hasn't got a finish in his UFC career at all, and yes, he's got decent wins, but he hasn't got a finish in the UFC, which isn't the end of the world. But at the same time, to have 6 wins in the UFC without a finish at light heavyweight, it's not like he's a flyweight who don't tend to get a lot of finishes and do tend to go to the decision. He's a light heavyweight, so these are big boys, and he hasn't got a finish in 6, but he has been finished in 4. Wow, he's been finished in every one of his UFC losses.
In every loss.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. So he's been knocked out twice and submitted 3 times. So, if he's been submitted 3 times, Kutalaba has to utilize his wrestling and, utilize that ground game.
No, I totally agree. I don't know what to expect from this fight. It is a light heavyweight fight through and through in terms of Ian Kutalaba could get a 1st round knockout and it could be amazing and it could be headliner, or Devin Clark just kind of outpaces him on a really lame fight for 3 rounds. Who knows? I don't know what to expect from it. This is a light heavyweight fight of guys outside the top 10. So, it's fine. Ariane Lipinski versus Mandy Baum is on this card. Otherwise, yeah, it's fine. I don't know if there's anything else on there we really need to cover.
Yeah,
There's not even like anything going on this weekend. There's no PFLs, there's no Bellator, there's no ones
I
or
think that
anything
there
like
is a
that.
Bellator. I think is it not? I
Are
think
you kidding
so.
me?
I
Oh,
think
Bellator
it's
266, of
yeah two
course.
six six. With Romero and Phil Davis. We'll see how Romero is in that fight, but I think going back to the UFC quickly, I've got three
Yes.
people to look out for. Is Kasanganay is obviously was on the receiving end of that jump spinning back kick thing by Joaquin Buckley last year.
Yeah, that was
He's
awesome.
on the comeback trail. He's obviously 1-0 since that knockout, and he got the submission late on. He used his wrestling game in that. He dropped down from middleweight to welterweight, and he's another welterweight fight. So I'm excited to see him back in there. Armand Sarukian's back. He's lightweight, who I think I think he's excellent. I think he went the distance with Makachev
Mhm.
in not last time out, and he's ranked 14. I think a win here probably doesn't do too much for his ranking, but it definitely gets him a bigger fight next time out. And we've also got Hannah Goldie back in there, who is, yes, she's 0-2 in the UFC, but she lost a debut on short notice. And then she had almost, I think, a year and a half out and lost again against Diana Belbita last time out. But that was only 2 months ago. She's fighting Emily Whitmire. I think Hannah Goldie, the shorter turnaround for her, she's good. She's ripped. She's a muscly girl, and we can see that strength against Emily Whitmire, who likes to work the ground game. So I think we'll be able to see what Hannah Goldie's really about. UFC career. She's only, I think, 5-0 when she joined the UFC, or maybe 5-1. So it's going to be. I think that's opening the card. I think. Yeah, so she was 5-1 when she joined the UFC. She fought in August 2019 and then didn't fight again until July of this year. So she's had best part of 2 years out, and she's facing Emily Whitmire, who she's 4-4. She was on the Ultimate Fighter. She went 2-0 in the UFC, and then has lost against Amanda Ribas and Poliana Viana, both by submission. She's been
Not
out
bad
since.
losses. Those are both great fighters.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And but with that being said, her wins in the UFC have come over Jamie Moyle, who herself is 4-4 and hasn't won in a hot second, and Alexandra Albu, who I never understood why she was in the UFC. She was, when she joined the UFC, she was 1-0, and she went 2-0, and then she went 2-2, and obviously now she's been cut. But I never understood that. So I think well, on Tapology site they open up the card, which I think it's not a bad shout. I think having a female fight to open up the card, there's two women who need a win. They're both 0-2 in their last two, who are both going to bring it. I think is it's a good idea from the UFC in my opinion.
No, I do agree with you. What else do you see on that? There's nothing else on this card. I really, Joaquin
No,
Buckley.
it's
We don't really know how good Joaquin Buckley is. He got maybe the best knockout of all time, and then he just loses the next fight. So yeah, we
yeah,
never really know. Mandy Baum, as I mentioned earlier, she's undefeated from Germany. She was kind of one of my prospects to keep your eye on. I think she trains out of SVT Ireland as well. She's
yeah. They were scheduled
probably
on last week's card, I remember. Because they were
yeah.
meant to be fighting in when this card was originally in London. They were scheduled for that card, and obviously that the London card itself never went ahead. So, and
Which is unfortunate.
Lipsky is what she is. She came in with a lot of hype from KSW, and then hasn't really lived up to that hype. She got the knee bar with a famous when she's bending. I can't remember the girl's name, but she's bending her knee just completely the wrong way. That makes me cringe. But then she hasn't looked. I think obviously she was exposed by Antonina Shevchenko, and I think she's maybe picked up another loss since then. And
Yeah, she's
I
an
think
okay fighter, isn't she?
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, so she was exposed by, it was Luana Carolina that she got the knee bar victory over, and then she got TKO by Shevchenko and TKO by Montella De La Rosa last time out in June. She,
Yeah.
as ridiculous as it sounds, she should be a lot better. Entering KSW is not a poor promotion; it's a big promotion, and she was the two-time champion of that promotion. You know, she beat Diana Belbita for the belt, and then made 2 defenses of that belt before joining the UFC, and she's 2-4 in the UFC. But I think she just needs to have a little, you know, to be honest, a little more confidence, because she's a good fighter. She's still only 27, so she's got a big ceiling above her, but she really needs to be beating the sort of more inexperienced fighters like Mandy Barn, who she fights this weekend.
Now, that being said, I'll pick Mandy in this fight.
Yeah, me too. Which is ridiculous after we say that, but you know, she's 7-0, Mandy Barn, and she's fought the last time out she fought in Bellator.
Yeah,
she's almost a year out.
Competed in grappling competitions. Like she's quite sufficient all around. So I'm hoping she's the next one.
Yeah, she's been signed for the UFC for a while. She was supposed to, according to Tapology, you know, she's had 2 fights cancelled with Talia Santos, and then who is a beast herself. And then this fight was obviously just rescheduled. It goes down as being cancelled, of course, but it was just rescheduled for 2 weeks later, or a week later. So, you know, she's good. I'll obviously keep a bit more of an eye to that one because it's a European fighter. But yeah, I think to be honest, I think whichever lady wins that is probably up for maybe a top 15 fight afterwards, because if the flyweight division is so thin on the ground.
Definitely. I'll totally agree with you on that. I think that's good. So yeah, those are the ones to watch for on the upcoming card. Should we jump into the Bellator main event quick?
Yeah. We've got an article coming out I edited this morning. It's coming out tomorrow morning. Looking at the top five guys to watch guys and girls to watch on that Bellator 266 card. Obviously including Yoel Romero, who will he make his Bellator debut? We thought he was going to make it this time a few months ago, and he had to pull out with that eye injury. He should be beating Phil Davis, really. Does he beat Phil Davis though? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. He's looked old in his most recent fights. On paper, he will be, I believe, slightly smaller because Phil Davis is quite big. But in terms of wrestling credentials, it's not even close. Yoel Romero is a million times better wrestler. In terms of, like, we're talking about an Olympic wrestler versus NCAA, and yes, that's very good. But Yoel Romero is the better wrestler. Both of these fighters are okay with going to the lowest gear possible and fighting an entire fight in the lowest gear.
Yeah.
So you might see an insane flying knee knockout or something like that, or you might just see 2 guys kind of pacing around each other, because both guys have been in some of the worst fights in MMA history, both of them. Like, I'm not just saying one of them, but both of them have been terrible fights. But yeah, I don't know what to expect from this.
I think the thing is, Romero has obviously got the better wrestling credentials, but as far as transferring that over to MMA, we haven't really, for a number of fights now, we haven't actually seen him use that wrestling.
Never. Yeah, that's right.
And you know, why is that? Is he scared of gassing out? And now this is a 6-round fight. God, no, it's a 5-round fight, I'd assume, for Bellator's main event. Oh no, sorry, my apologies. Of course, it's not. It's Bellator, isn't it? So it's a 3-round main event. So we might see him wrestle a little bit more if he's going to go up in weight. We might see him wrestle a little bit more, but I'm surprised that his last win was Luke Rockhold in, I think it was in Australia when they fought at UFC 221 back in 2018, February of 2018. That's his last win.
Yeah.
In MMA, he's got a grappling win prior to that. But I mean, that makes for rough reading if you're a Romero fan. You know, he's 4-1 in his last 5, but he's fought Whittaker twice, Adesanya once, and Paulo Costa, which could have gone either way. And he knocked out Luke Rockhold. But 41 is he? 44. Yeah. He's 44. What does he really hope to be kicking it with the best at Bellator? You know, Nemkov at light heavyweight, Ryan Bader, who has got the defensive wrestling to arguably deal with, and the size to deal with Romero. You know, he's fought up at heavyweight, so. It'll be dicey for Romero if he loses this one. I think he probably has one more and then calls it a day. One more sort of easy fight, which Bellator will be more than happy to give him.
Yeah, I don't know what the future holds for Romero. He doesn't beat Nemkov. He probably doesn't beat Bader. He might beat Phil Davis just because both of them can pace themselves so slowly that he can land one more punch kind of in the fight. I don't entirely know what to expect from this fight, but yeah, he might honestly beat Phil Davis, but he has looked ever the old man more recently, and he is quite. I think at light heavyweight he is quite small at 5'10". He's not going to be the biggest fighter in that weight class. I don't entirely know what to expect, but yeah, that's the Bellator main event. Who else? Who else is on the list of watch out for?
So obviously we've got Alejandra Lara, who takes on Deanna Bennett on the list. That's a fight where we could really see, Bennett's just fought Liz Carmouche. Both ladies are coming off a loss, but similar to the UFC, the 125 division in Bellator isn't the strongest division. So we could see someone maybe sort of making a bit of a break for the top 5 of the division. Obviously, we know with the Bellator rankings, you have to sign for Bellator and you're already in the rankings. It's not an awful lot of competition. So we could see one of those take a real step towards to almost title contention with just one win, which is a shame, really, but it is what it is. We've obviously got Georgie Karatarian facing Saul Rogers. Georgie's coming off the win against Kiefer Crosby last time out, which is a win that I think Kiefer Crosby's a real deal. He's big, he's violent, he's good on the ground, he's good on the feet, and he submitted him in the first round against Saul Rogers, who, again, he's looked good. He did lose his last time out against Maz Burnell, but with Saul Rogers, he's one of those that's he's always going to be a Bellator fighter. He had his chance in the UFC and he couldn't get. He had visa issues in the tough final. He's supposed to be facing Ryan Hall, and who knows if he'd already beaten Ryan Hall once, so he could have easily beaten Ryan Hall again. And who knows how his UFC career would have gone, but he's always going to be a Bellator fighter, Saul Rogers. And it'll be interesting to see how that fight goes, because I think, two well-rounded guys that either of them can take the fight wherever they want it.
Absolutely agree. No, it should be a fun card. Bellator can sometimes do quite fun events. Outside of the main event, it's probably more worth watching, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. It gets a bit dicey the further you get up the card, especially in the main event. So.
All right. So I think that's all we have time for this week. We've probably been over an hour now. Next week, we're going to be breaking down some major fights that we have going on. We finally got a really good UFC card coming up. So we'll be talking all about that one, folks. My name is Tim Wheaton. You can find me more Tim Wheaton MMA. We are MMA Sucka. Make sure to keep it locked to MMASucka.com. We'll also be on Spotify and YouTube quite soon. Frazer, where can we find more of you? What's going on? Talk us out of here.
Yeah, so you can find me at Frazer_Crone on Twitter and Frazer Crone Writing on Instagram. I post a lot about football and stuff on there as well, if that's what interests you. But yeah, we're all over the MMA Sucka website, and like Tim just alluded to, we're sorting out getting ourselves on Spotify, which will hopefully take our podcast game to the next level. Because obviously we've been really enjoying this. We're here every Monday or Tuesday, so yeah, keep it locked to the YouTube channel as well.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.